How does Abraham's willingness to kill Isaac demonstrate his faith? We'll talk about it. I think one of the most misunderstood Bible passages is Abraham and his sending to kill Isaac on the mountain. And the reason why it's so misunderstood is people see Abraham's willingness to kill Isaac as a demonstration of his obedience to God and God's law. In other words, we see Abraham killing Isaac as a demonstration of his love for God, while the Bible tells us that it's a demonstration of Abraham's faith in God. Now, love is what obeys a commandment, but faith is what obeys a promise. And here's the key. You see, God had given to Abraham the promise that his seed, from his seed, would be children as many as the stars in the sky and the sand on the sea. From his seed, all the nations of the world would be blessed. In fact, the promise that from Abraham, the Messiah would be born. And God, Abraham and Sarah tried to make that promise come true by having a child through Hagar, and the Lord said no. In fact, through Sarah, and then through Abraham, to Abraham, God gave the promise that it was through Isaac that the seed would come, and he would be blessed. Now think about this. God comes to Abraham and says, this boy, Isaac, will be the one that I fulfill all of my promises to you. And then God comes to him and says, now take Isaac, your only son, your beloved son. First time the word love is used in the entire Bible. Take that one and put him to death. Now, you see, it's not just a test that the Lord brings to Abraham. It's not just a test of his love for God. It's a test in his faith. Does Abraham believe that God will keep the promise and through Isaac bless all the nations of the world? Through Isaac cause the Messiah to be born. And when Abraham goes up on the mountain and stands there and carries Isaac up and puts him on there. Remember this incredibly moving story where they get to the base of the mountain and Abraham puts the wood on the back of Isaac, and Isaac says, where's the sacrifice? And Abraham says, the Lord will provide. And so they go up and Isaac willingly lays down his own life as a sacrifice. And Abraham goes to kill his only begotten son. That Abraham knows that even if he puts Isaac to death, that the Lord will raise him back up to life, because God has a promise to keep, and he will keep his promises. God has to cause the Messiah to be born of Isaac. God has to cause Isaac to have other children, so that Abraham knows that even if he puts him to death, the Lord will raise him up. Now that's what Hebrews tells us. In Hebrews 11, when it has the faith of Abraham, it's starting in verse 17. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said, in Isaac your seed shall be called, concluding that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from which he also received him in a figurative sense. So Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac is not just a test of the love of Abraham, but of the faith of Abraham. And it points us to the importance of this promise that started in the Garden of Eden and runs all the way through the Bible, the promise of the seed born of a woman who would have his heel crushed and who would crush the head of the devil. Abraham believed that promise. He believed that his seed would be the Messiah, that Isaac's seed would be the Messiah, and even if he put Isaac to death, that God would raise him back up from the dead. Now the story is beautiful, right? He goes to sacrifice Isaac, and as soon as he raises his hand, the angel stops him, and he looks, and there's a ram with his horns caught in the thicket, so that the Lord does provide the ram for the sacrifice, just like he provided Christ as the sacrifice for us, crowned even with thorns, to stand in our place, in Isaac's place, in Abraham's place, the seed of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Judah, born of Mary and crucified for us. So when you read the story of Abraham and Isaac, remember, it's not just proving how much Abraham loved God, it's proving how much Abraham believed God, believed the promise of the seed, believed the promise of the gospel, and believing he had faith in this promise, and the Lord kept his promise, just like he keeps his promises with us. Amen. My expert YouTube advisor, Daniel, said, Dad, the last video, you forgot to remind people to subscribe. So you got to go back to the last video and subscribe. Or you can subscribe here. Let's do that.